All right, so let's go back to one of our top stories this hour, wherein the Basic Education Minister, Angie Motshekga, says they anticipate big problems after the 24th of August when most of the learners return to school. Motshekga visited schools in Lethlabile in Brits in the northwest, where matric learners have started the new term. She says she is confident that the class of 2020 will be able to graduate as planned this year. We take the discussion further now with an education expert who's also the head of education at Section 27, Professor Metcalfe, who joins me now live via Skype. Prof, good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the SABC News channel.
Thank you. I'm not the head of education at Section 27, but I have huge respect for their work.
Thank you so much for that clarity, Prof. Now, I don't know whether you may have heard what the minister had said earlier, saying that they're anticipating a big problem when everyone returns to school later this month. What sense do you get from that statement? Do you not think that this might create more confusion and anxiety amongst learners and their parents?
One of the things that COVID has brought us is lots of anxiety and confusion. I think that the problems that we need to solve are the problems at school level. Every school needs to make sure that it is safe for teachers to return, for workers to return, and learners to return. When all learners come back at the end of August, it's going to be a massive organizational challenge for schools. They will need to have all of the resources that they need to be safe, as well as the systems and routines, which are considerable in a large organization. And schools will only really be ready, not only when they've got the systems and the resources, but they also have the confidence of the community. We have to be ready across schools in the country to cope with spikes in COVID, breakouts in COVID, challenges that we face, because this is the reality for the next 18 months, for as long as the infection is with us. So leaders at school level need to work confidently with the members of the school community and outside of the school community to be ready for the 28th and to manage the opening and closing that may result after this opening on the 28th.
And I think that's precisely what many people have been saying, that this sort of creates that, once again, that sense of panic amongst the parents. So many saying that the fact that she knows that problems are to be experienced, which is precisely on the other hand what the unions have been saying. They say the minister should at least tell them about the readiness of the Department of Education to deal with those problems when they arise, instead of talking about the problems.
There's readiness at system level. We do need the reports from the leadership of provincial departments and nationally, if they've been able to provide all of the resources that schools need. Do they have the sanitizers, the personal protective equipment such as masks? Do they have all of the water that's required? But readiness at school level needs to be determined by the leadership at school level working together with community. We need to know that this is not going to be a normal year for schooling in South Africa, that the time that is lost is going to have to be made up over several years, and that we must not be expecting our learners to perform in terms of passing or failing and completing the school year as we might have hoped at the beginning of the year. Learners need to be supported with their anxieties, but as a country, have and minimizing the negative consequences of this virus on our lives, on our learning. That doesn't diminish as teachers, as learners, as families, to make sure we keep safe.
I think that's what also what the minister clarified a little earlier today, saying that only 70% of the curriculum will be completed this year. This, of course, except for the matriculants who have already gone back to school now. Do you think this will, in a way, sort of disadvantage the learners going forward? As you say that what's left of this year's academic year will have to be covered up for in the coming years?
We cannot let any learners be prejudiced by COVID relative to other learners. Where learners have not been in school, where they've been away from school, where there's protracted school closures, it cannot disadvantage learners relative to those who've been at school more often, who've been able to learn at home. So we have to make sure that the end-of-year examinations are no prejudice exams for those learners. They have to be low-stake.
Yeah, Prof, let's just try again.
I believe.
Let's just try once again.
Have the confidence to take forward learning into the next year. All
right. So we lost you for some time there, Prof. So you talk about other learners being disadvantaged or prejudiced. And a lot of people saying that COVID-19 really exposed the inequality cracks that exist within the society, because not every learner was able to go online and continue with learning as normal. So what lessons should be drawn from the pandemic itself and the way new normal has been carried out by the education sector?
Well, firstly, that there's massive inequalities in our system, which COVID has amplified and which COVID cannot study at home. Some learners are much more affected by the epidemic than others. When we prepare for the end of the year, it cannot be as per normal end of the year. It has to be understanding that learners cannot be disadvantaged in terms of passing or failing because of COVID. It has to be a low-stakes assessment for the learning that they weren't able to access in 2020 and catch that up in 2021, even into 2022. The primary goal of schools at the moment must be to maximize learning, to give learners a sense of structure, to help them structure their learning at home, and to make sure that we are able to maintain schools as centers of support, in particularly with school nutrition.
All right, I'm afraid, Prof, that's where we'll leave it for today. But thank you so much for all your insights. Professor Mary Metcalfe is an education expert talking to us about what then happens going forward when all other grades are phased in from the 24th of August. Let's